Okay, after explaining the short run cost curve, now we move to explain the concept of cost curve in the long run. So in the first place, we have the long run average cost curve. So the long run, as we have noted above, is a period of time during which, the firm can vary all its inputs. So long run would mean there is no, fixed factors. So every factors that is used for production can be changed or can vary. But opposite to that, in the short run, we have, discussed that in the short run, some inputs are fixed, and others are varied to increase the level of output. So in the long run, none of the factors is fixed and all can be varied to expand output. So the long run production function has therefore, no fixed factors, and the firm has no fixed costs in the long run. And it is conventional to regard, the size or scale of plant as a typical fixed input. And again here, the term plant, P-L-A-N-T, is to be understood as, consisting of capital equipment, those machinery, those factory buildings, those etc. And in the short run, the size of the plant is fixed and it cannot be increased or reduced because it is a short run period. In other words, one cannot change the amount of capital equipment in the short run, if one has to increase or decrease output. So on the other hand, long run is a period of time, sufficiently long enough to permit changes in the plant. So that is the capital equipment, those machinery, building, etc. can be purchased or changed in order to expand or in order to contract output. So they can be easily changed because there is sufficient time. So what we are going to discuss is the long run average cost curve. So the long run average cost of production is nothing but it is the least possible unit of cost of production any given level of output when all inputs are variable, including the size of the plant. So the long run average cost curve is the least possible, the minimum possible unit cost of production at any given level of output when all the inputs can be changed or all inputs are variable, including of course the size of the plant, because in the long run everything is variable, everything can be changed, everything can be changed in order to expand output or to contract output. So that is long run average cost curve. And remember, a producer or a firm will produce any given level of output with minimum possible cost by using the optimum combination of factors of production. So that is the basic thing that a firm has to keep in mind while producing a product. So they will produce any given level of output with minimum possible cost of production by using the optimum combination of factors of production. So this figure 6 shows how the long run average cost curve is derived. So this is the diagram representing the derivation of the long run average cost curve. That is figure number 6. So this is figure 6, which is indicating the derivation of the long run average cost curve. So again, on the x-axis we are measuring the output, and on the y-axis we are measuring the average cost, and O is the origin. and Q1, Q2, Q3 is the level of output at a certain point corresponding to the curve. So we have the short run average cost curve SAC1, and then the short run average cost curve SAC2, and then again the short run average cost curve 3. So from the short run average cost curve, we are deriving the long run average cost curve. So let us try to explain this diagram. So let us suppose that there are three plant sizes, represented by SAC1, SAC2, and SAC3. So three plant size that is in front of us that are available, from which the firm has to choose in its long run planning. So depending on the demand for its product, if the firm decides to produce OQ1, so depending upon the demand, if the firm decides to produce OQ1 level of output, then it is evident from figure 6 that it will choose to produce with plant size represented by the short run average cost curve SA1. So if the producer is planning to produce OQ1 level of output or amount of output, it is clear from this diagram that it will choose plant size SAC1 represented by SAC1, the plant SAC1 that a firm will choose to produce, will choose this plant size to produce OQ1 level of output with the cost of A at point A corresponding to the output. The average cost is A at plant size SAC1. So when a firm is producing, or depending upon the demand, if it tries to produce OQ1 level of output, the firm will choose the plant size represented by SAC1, and it will be operating at a point A. So at point A, a firm will try to use the, so at operation point A, a firm is producing OQ1 level of output with using the optimum variable factors of production. But what if a firm tries to use the higher plant size, say SAC2, to produce OQ1 level of output? The operation point will be at B. So when you see that Q1B is greater than Q1A, so the cost the firm will incur is greater, that is Q1B is greater than Q1A. So looking at figure 6, the production of output OQ1 with the higher plant size with short run average cost curve SA2, the operation point is at point B. So at SAC2, it will cost the firm Q1B, which is greater than Q1A. Now, if the firm plans to produce a higher output, say OQ2, it will choose a plant size represented by the short run average cost curve SAC2, and corresponding to that, C is the operation point when OQ1 level of output is produced. It will be operating at point C by using the appropriate amount of labor and other factors. So in this way, it will minimize its cost for producing OQ2 at higher cost. So at point OQ2 level of output and the plant size SAC2, it will be operating at point C, and it will be using the optimum, or using the appropriate quantity of labor and other factors. So in this way, the firm will minimize its cost of producing OQ2 quantity of output. And if a firm produces output OQ2 with a smaller amount, say SAC1, so smaller amount, it will incur a higher cost QD2 per unit. QD2 per unit. So if a firm is producing OQ2 level of output, and if it is using a smaller plant size, let us say SAC1, the cost that they will incur is Q2D. So Q2D is the average cost, the cost that they will incur if they are choosing the small plant size SAC1 to produce OQ2 level of output. So Q2D is much greater than Q2C. So similarly, if a firm plans to produce OQ3 level of output by choosing the plant size represented by the short run average cost curve SA3, it will be operating at point E. And to minimize its total cost of producing OQ3, it will be operating at point E. So if there were only 3 possible plant sizes with short run average cost curve SA1, SA2 and SA3, the long run average cost curve would be the solid scallop portion of this short run average cost curve. So the solid scallop portion is this one. So this will be the long run average cost curve. That is why we are deriving the long run average cost curve from the short run average cost curve. So if there are only 3 plant sizes available for a firm to choose, then the solid scallop portion of the short run average cost curve will represent the long run average cost curve. The dotted points, the dotted part of the short run average cost curve will not form the part of long run average cost curve, but it is only the solid scallop portion that we call it will form the long run average cost curve. That is how we derive the long run average cost curve. So if the factors of production, including the plant size, are perfectly divisible, so that numerous plant sizes become available, the long run average cost curve will be the smooth U shape. So this smooth U shape curve will represent the LAC, or long run average cost curve. So it is important to note that in this case of perfect divisibility of factors, long run average cost curve will consist of only 1 point each of all the corresponding short run average curve. So it is evident from the above that the long run average cost curve contains several short run average cost curve, as you can see from here. It is generally called an enveloped. And as long as the long run curve is used for long run planning for production of a product, it is called a planning curve. So this LAC, long run average cost curve, since it is used for long run planning for production of a product, it is also called a planning curve. As we have said that a firm will try to minimize their cost of production by using the optimum, or appropriate factors of variable proportion. When a firm, depending upon the level of demand, tries to produce OQ1 level of or amount of output, it will choose the smaller plant size SAC1, and correspondingly it will operate at a point A. And similarly, at OQ2 level of output or amount of output, a firm will choose a plant size corresponding to SAC2, and operation point is at point C. But if a firm tries to select a smaller plant size, say SAC1, then average cost is at point D. So here Q2D is much greater than Q2C. And in the previous one, when a firm tries to select a larger or bigger plant size for OQ1 level of output, its average cost is Q1B. So Q1B is again greater than Q1A. That is why it will choose at point A for OQ1 level of output, and it will choose at point C for level of output which is equal to OQ2. And similarly, at OQ3 amount of output, a firm will choose a plant size corresponding to SA3, and it will operate at point E. And by having all the short run average cost curve, we can derive what is called the long run average cost curve, which is the solid scallop portion that we say. Solid scallop portion is the long run average cost curve. So we can say that in a long run average cost curve, it is a combination of many short run average cost curve, and when there is a perfect divisibility of factors of variable factors, the smooth U shape is the long run average cost curve. So we are deriving the long run average cost curve from the short run average cost curve. And again, there is a close relation between the long run average cost curve and the returns to scale. So we saw above that the U shape of the short run average cost curve is explained with the help of law of variable proportion. So the short run average cost curve is explained with the help of law of variable proportion. But in the long run average cost curve depends upon the returns to scale. So in the long run, it is the returns to scale. When it comes to short run, it is the law of variable proportion. Since again in the long run, all inputs including the capital, equipment, the plants can be changed, the relevant concept governing the shape of this long run average cost curve is that of return to scale and no longer law of variable proportion. So it is because of the increasing returns to scale that in the beginning the long run average cost curve falls. So the long run average cost curve falls in the beginning because of the increasing returns to scale. So in the beginning, the long run average cost of production falls as output is increases. And in the next step, likewise, it is because of the decreasing returns to scale that the long run average cost of production is rising beyond reaching a certain point. So at point C, it is beginning to rise. The LAC curve began to rise because of the decreasing returns to scale. But in the beginning, it is falling due to the increasing returns to scale. So when it comes to long run average cost curve, it is the returns to scale, unlike the short run cost curve, which is explained through the law of variable proportion. So the next and the last topic that we have is long run marginal cost. So we have discussed the marginal cost and the average cost for the short run. So it is the long run marginal cost. So in the figure 6, let us explain this relationship in the form of diagrammatical representation. So in the figure 6, we have drawn the long run marginal cost curve, that is LMC, corresponding to the given long run average cost curve, LAC. So the long run marginal cost curve has the same relationship. So the long run marginal cost has the same relationship. So LMC and LAC has the same relationship as we have explained earlier between the LAC and the LMC. So let us see that relationship. So it will be seen from figure 7 that as long as long run average cost curve is falling, so as long as LAC is falling, LMC is below LAC. And likewise, at point E, LAC and LMC intersects. So E is the point of intersection where LMC equals LAC. And as you can see from here, LMC cuts the long run average cost curve at the minimum point of LAC again. And when LAC is falling, LMC is below LAC. And when LMC is above LAC, then LAC began to rise. And even here, we cannot, predict the direction of LMC according to the LAC, because when LAC is falling, LMC might either be still falling or rising. But we can say that when LAC is falling, LMC is below LAC. And when LAC began to rise, we cannot say that LMC will rise, because LMC can either still fall or rises when LAC is rising. But we can definitely say that when LAC starts rising, then LMC will be above LAC. That definitely we can say. So that is the same relationship between LMC and LAC as we have explained for the relationship between average cost and the marginal cost. So the same relationship occurs here, even between long run marginal cost and the long run average cost. So it is same with the average cost and the marginal cost of the short run when it comes to long run. And QE is the minimum possible. QE is the minimum possible long run average cost. It is the minimum long run average cost. So a firm which produces at the minimum point of the long run average cost curve, that is output level OQ. It is the minimum output level, or it is called the optimum firm. So a firm or a producer who is producing at OQ level of output will be called the optimum firm, because at point OQ, QE is considered as the minimum average or minimum long run average cost. That is why a firm corresponding to this QE long run average cost, OQ is produced. So OQ is considered as the optimum level of output. So a firm producing at OQ level of output will be considered the optimum firm. So that is the relation between long run marginal cost and also the long run average cost, which is same with the short run marginal cost and the short run average cost. So with that, we have come to the end of chapter number 8, that is concept of cost and cost curve.